In 2012, Ford's, the 6.7s, they had an oil pan that had a groove machined in it, and they had a big gasket that went in there. Like, those form-fitting, looks like kind of O-ring material, and they never leaked. And I don't know what year it was, like 2015, 2016, I don't know what it was. We started seeing oil pans, upper oil pans leaking. Well, why are they leaking? That's crazy. How could it leak? Started taking them down, and we realized that they stopped machining that groove, probably saved money, and they siliconed them. And so once they siliconed them, they would leak. When they're built from the factory, they would silicone and then would leak. So then when we started seeing that, we started buying the 2012 oil pans. Like, we would just tell them, not our bin. We would just, like, say we're working on a 2016 or whatever. Right, we need an oil pan. Well, what's your van? We just, we buy from the same Ford dealership, and then so we need a pan for 2012. So when we first got the first oil pan, because, like, if you make a mistake, like if there's a port or something that's not right, you blow up the engine. So we're checking okay, where does this hole go from here in the oil pan? Because it's not just oil pan, right? There's oil ports in it and whatever. So we're blowing shop air through it. Hey, when I blow air, it comes out through here. What about yours? And so we check it out. And I'm like, oh, it's going to work. So I put it on, it works, bitching. Doesn't leak, doesn't come back. Great. Well, now, then we started having problems with, like, well, those pans are back order. So we had trouble, but we'd wait for them and try to get one. Then, just recently, it went to where they're discontinued, which makes sense. It's a 2012, and it's 2025, so they're discontinued. So, okay, fine, they're discontinued. So we find an aftermarket one. We order it, because we already told the guy we could do it. We've never used this one. You look at it, it looks great. Made of aluminum. Looks exactly the same, measures the same, bolts up the same, everything's great. The oil cooler mounts to the side of the oil pan. Put the oil cooler on there, start it up, take it out for a test drive, and the oil cooler's leaking. So my question is, did the oil cooler leak before? No. Then it's something we did. Or we're cleaning it, we must have damaged it, dropped it, or something. So we got a brand new one from Ford. Put it on there, and it leaked too. Wow. This is crazy. So you start getting out some, so the oil cooler is flat, where it bolts to the side, it's flat. So you start putting a straight edge on it, and you notice the tabs are bent. Like this, maybe 3/16 quarter aluminum, and the cooler's on the other side. So you see the tabs are bent over, and when you look at that, you see that it's pulling the cooler apart. When you're tightening it down, it's warping it, so it's pulling the cooler apart, and the cooler's leaking where the cooler mounts to that aluminum plate. So you start going, wow, what, so you start looking at everything, like taking whatever. So you look at the oil pan, and you start measuring how deep the groove is. Because the same thing, the oil cooler has a groove. There's 3, let's call them O-rings. And you put 3 in there, in the pan, and then put the cooler on, bolt it up, and you're done. It's a slam dunk. So that one's leaking too, so we start looking, so we start measuring. Start measuring the groove. And on the old oil pan and the new one, you're like, they didn't cut it deep enough. So you're thinking, no, this is the way it's machined, because I'm sure it's made in China. And it looks right, but there's no place for that O-ring material to go, because you know how the O-ring material has to stick out just past fly. It has to stick out, so when you push something against it, it'll seal. So then we're like, hey, aftermarket people that sold us this oil pan, can you sell us gaskets? Because the Ford gaskets, they're too tall for it. Oh, yeah, we have them. They send them to us. They measure exactly the same as the Ford gaskets. They stick up just as far. So then what we have to do is we take the old oil pan, and we put those 3, there's 2 oval ones and 1 round. We put them in the old oil pan, because we need to have them there. And we take, like, a block that you block sand something with, and we put 220 grit sandpaper on it, and sand, trying to knock off maybe a 64th of an inch, maybe. I couldn't measure it with a dial indicator, because you couldn't. It's aluminum. You couldn't get the dial indicator to stay on there. So the measurement was. So what we ended up doing to check it, the tire depth. Let's just get one of those. It'll still work. It's not going to give us 20 thousandths or whatever. 0.007. It wasn't giving us that. But you could definitely tell the groove wasn't. So then we came up with a feeler gauge measurement that we thought was right, but we still had the old cooler. So because it's made of aluminum, I could just beat it with a dead blow hammer and flatten it. So now the tabs are flat. So we sanded down all the gaskets, took the gaskets out of the old pan, put them in the new pan that's mounted in the truck. and then we put the cooler on again, and it bent it just a little bit. So we looked with a straight edge, we took it off, bent the tabs again. Hammer the tabs, get it perfectly straight again. Sanda on the O-rings. We're sanding O-rings with a block sander with 220, like, you know, and so I said, put it on one more time. Tell me what. So he puts it back on again, the oil cooler, and he goes, hey, it didn't bend it. And I'm like, well, then we must be at the right height. I said, so let's put the new cooler on because we're not going to damage, we won't damage it. And so I said, now we'll just have a problem that if we sanded them down too far, it's going to leak between the plate and the pan. So we drove it 60 miles and it didn't leak. So now the customers, so I guess what I'd want to share with anybody who's thinking about, hey, you know, these oil pans on the newer Fords, they leak because of, you know what I mean? Because, yeah, so you're like, I'm going to buy this aftermarket oil pan. Don't do it. Just tell the customer, I'm sorry, we'll take your old pan down. You know what I mean? We'll clean everything. We'll put some Right Stuff silicone on it.
Right. But what I'm
That's the
saying
best.
is,
Like, if anybody has that idea, don't do it. And maybe there's a different aftermarket. Maybe we bought the wrong one, you know, from one of our vendors. Maybe we bought the junky one. But I can't imagine there's a bunch of people tooling up to make these oil pans. But anyways.